Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Licensing Committee. For the benefit of the recording, I'm going to introduce the officers. Today we've got Kevin Nealon, who is Head of Community Protection Manager, Tina Adams, Head of Finance and ICT, Melvin Cryer, Head of Environment, Laura Chaplin, who is the Principal Legal Officer, and Ben Hopewell is from Democratic Services. Are there any apologies, please, for absence and substitutions? Councillor Ellis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Wilkinson, substituting by Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes. Thank you. Any further? Lovely. There are no minutes from the meeting last week. It's only a week ago, so they will be circulated along with the minutes of this meeting for the next meeting, which is scheduled for the 11th of July. Are there any declarations of interest? There are none. And so we now move on to item 3, which is the proposed taxi licensing fees for the year 2024/25. The report will be presented by Mr. Cryer, Head of Environment.
Thank you, Chair. This report to committee is to approve the proposed fees for taxi driver, operator and vehicle licensing for 2024/25 as shown in Appendix 1 on page 15 in your pack. Subject to advertisement requirements being satisfied and to approve a proposed increase to the general taxi licensing fee for 24/25 as shown Appendix 1 on page 15 in your pack. The fixing of fees proposed in the attached fee schedule at Appendix 1 for 24/25 is a function of the Environment and Licensing Committee as laid out in the Local Authorities Regulations 2000. It follows internal review held during 23/24 of the setting of the taxi licensing fees, which was independently reviewed by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. The review involved an analysis of the workflows and associated time to correctly apportion service costs to drivers and vehicle and operator licenses, to establish individual memorandum accounts to help provide clear transparency to fee setting. As detailed in the legal implications section of this report at paragraph 5.4 on page 13, the Council cannot make a profit from licence fees and there must be a carry forward of any surplus. There can also be recovery of any deficit. The reconciliation of any surplus and deficit to ensure full cost recovery, i.e. a break-even position, is over a 3-year cycle. The calculation in respect of each type of licence issued by the Council should be kept separate in memorandum accounts. The rounded balances of which carried forward at the 1st of April 23 were driver's licence deficit, 47,000, vehicle licence surplus, 42,000, and operator licence surplus, £730. The respective surpluses on vehicle and operator licences and the proportion of the deficit on driver's licence will be incorporated into the fee setting for 24/25 as part of the 3-year cycle. The projected year-end balances for 23/24 will also be incorporated into this 24/25 calculation, and any differences between the actual and projected year-end figures for 23/24 will be taken into account when setting fees for 25/26 as part of the 3-year accounting cycle. The proposed fees for 24/25 are attached at Appendix 1 on page 15 of your pack, and the summary of the budgets and fee calculations are both on a full cost recovery basis, and the proposed new fees contained within Appendix 2 on page 17 of your pack, which have been calculated employing the methodology determined by the internal review and confirmed by CIPFA, incorporating their recommendations. It's previously been the Council's stated intention to achieve full cost recovery on the taxi licence accounts over time, and this remains the objective. The proposed fees at Appendix 1 on page 15 are based upon estimates of the cost of taxi licensing service provision for 24-25 as apportioned to the memorandum accounts for each licence type. There are some increased costs included in the 24-25 budget compared to 23-24. For example, inflationary pressures, including pay awards, which have been consistently applied to all council services. These additional costs are partly offset by some reductions in costs, e.g. the closure of the dedicated taxi licensing desk at the Civic Centre and improved working practices, which have resulted in reduction of the recharge from customer services. This reduction in customer services time being spent on taxi licensing can be seen in the tables in the report on page 9 of your pack. The calculated fees to achieve full cost recovery, excluding driver licences, for each licence type is detailed in Appendix 1 on page 15, with associated budgets detailed on Appendix 2, page 17. Apart from the number of drivers taking the knowledge test, all other assumed licence numbers forecast to be issued during 24 and 25 have fallen. Taken thus, the surplus and deficits from previous years and budgetary forecasts for 24-25, the changes from 23-24 rates can be summarised as follows. Vehicle licences a decrease of 21%. One-year operator licences with between 1 and 10 vehicles, a reduction in the fee within the range of 2 to 39%. One-year operators licence in excess of 10 vehicles, a small increase within the range of 2 to 5%. Five-year operators with between 1 and 5 vehicles, a reduction in fee with a range between 16 and 29%. Five-year operators licences in excess of 5 vehicles, a small increase within the range of 0 to 5%. Driver licences to achieve full cost recovery, an increase in fee within the range of 3 to 21%. And the knowledge test, a reduction in fee of 11%. The review of past fee setting confirmed that drivers' licence were being provided at a deficit. In other words, the income received has not covered the cost of providing the licence and has previously received a subsidy from the council taxpayer. However, as recommended by CIPFA, it is proposed that the new fee level for driver licences be phased in over time to reduce the impact on licence holders. This means that the service will continue to be subsidised by the council taxpayer for a short period until cost recovery can be achieved, either by cost reductions through further changes to service provision or increased fees. The proposed driver fee represents a phased implementation of fee increases over 3 years to move towards desired full cost recovery. The Act permits the council to set vehicle and operator licence fees, but where this fee exceeds £25, as is the case at Gedling, a public notice of the proposed fees must be advertised in a local newspaper circulating in the district. This notice must be advised where any objections to the fee changes can be made, and we must allow a period of at least 28 days consultation from publication of the notice for objections to be lodged before the final determination of these fees. If no objections are made, or if all objections are withdrawn, the fees can come into effect at the end of the 28-day period on the date specified in the notice. Where objections are not withdrawn, the council must then consider the objections before determining the fee level and setting a further date not later than 2 months after the first specified date on which the new fee shall come into force. In relation to taxi drivers' licence application fees in Appendix 1, there's no statutory requirement to publish any changes in the level of fees. However, with the vehicle and operators licence fees, Gedling will publish details of the proposed fees for 24-25 and provide a period of 28 days from publication for any objections to the fees to be lodged with the council. Any such objections will be considered by the council before the proposed fees are finally approved. In relation to the general taxi fees in Appendix 1, there is no requirement to advertise any increase in fees, and a 5% fee increase, subject to roundings, is proposed to contribute to cost recovery as part of the memorandum accounts. In terms of alternative options, that the fee increase is not applied which would result in the council not moving towards operating the service at full cost recovery, requiring a higher subsidy from the council taxpayer. That a lower fee increase be applied to that proposed. A lower fee increase or fee reduction would increase the estimated deficit on driver fees and introduce an estimated deficit on vehicle and operator licences, as these would have been proposed to achieve cost recovery. The resulting deficit would then be carried forward as part of the 3-year accounting cycle and would potentially result in an increased fee for 25-26. As the ultimate aim is to achieve full cost recovery without a council taxpayer subsidy and to achieve some stability in fees for licence holders going forward, this option is not recommended. That a higher fee increase be applied to driver licence to reduce the estimated deficit and move more quickly towards full cost recovery. A high increase is not recommended due to the potential impact on licence holders. The proposed phasing in over 3 years seeks to achieve a fair balance between taxpayer subsidy and cost recovery from the licence holder. The council could choose not to advertise the driver licence fees, as this is not a statutory requirement. This would mean there is no consultation with the licence holders, which again is not recommended given the proposed phasing in of fee increases for this group. In terms of financial implication, the report sets out the method used when calculating the taxi and private hire fees and charges for 24-25. The memorandum accounts for driver, vehicle and operator licence detailing the estimated costs of service provision. So, just catching myself. By licence type, the calculated fees that would be required to achieve cost recovery based on projected volumes of licences and the actual proposed fee, including the consequent estimated deficit or surplus arising from the proposal to phase in the fee, is detailed in Appendix 2 and summarised in the table on page 12 in your pack. Estimated taxi licence memorandum accounts for 24-25 based on proposed fees detailed in Appendix 1. Drivers' fees increase to be phased in over 3 years. The council can't make a profit and must carry forward any surplus. Any deficit can also be carried forward and can be recovered in subsequent years. Surplus or deficits will be considered when fee setting in future years with the aim of reconciliation occurring over a 3-year cycle. The surpluses or deficits arising from 22-23 and projected for 23-24 have been taken into account when setting fees for 24-25 as part of the 3-yearly accounting cycle. 25-26 is the last year of the first 3-year balancing cycle. Driver's licences forecast an overall deficit at the end of the 3 years of 56,100. In order to ensure full cost recovery over 3 years, we would need to significantly increase drivers' licence fees to an amount which is not deemed to be fair or equitable. Therefore, the council proposes to write off 50% of the 22-23 deficit of 47,000, which equates to 23,500, and carry 50% over to recover in future years. In addition, the council has proposed a digital data technology strategy for approval, which will be expected to deliver a range of efficiencies through the use of technology and, in doing so, reduce costs. We envisage that we will see some reduction in costs over the next 3-year cycle, which will be used to offset the deficit and further reduce fees for the customer. In terms of legal implications, Section 53 and 70 of the Act allow the Council to charge fees for the grant of licences in respect of hackney carriage and private hire drivers, vehicles and operators. The legislation specifies the elements that can be included in the cost of the licence fee. Section 70 covers the vehicle and operators' licences. The Act states that the Council may charge such fees as may be sufficient in the aggregate to cover whole or in part the reasonable cost of inspecting hackney carriages and private hire vehicles to ascertain whether any such licences should be granted or renewed, and the reasonable cost of providing hackney carriage stands. Any reasonable administrative or other costs in connection with the above, with the control and supervision of hackney carriages and private hire vehicles. Section 53 of the Act covers the fee for driver's licences the Council may charge. Such fees, as it considers reasonable with a view to recovering the costs of issue and administration associated with the grant of Hackney carriage and private hire drivers' licences. Case law has established that the cost for enforcement of unlicensed drivers, vehicles or operators cannot be included in the calculation. The Council cannot make a profit from licence fees and therefore there must be a carry forward of any surplus. There can also be recovery of deficit. The reconciliation of any surplus and deficit is over the 3-year cycle as stated. When the Council proposes to set new fees for vehicle and operator licences, it is required by Section 70 of the Act to publish notice of the proposed variations in a local newspaper as discussed. There is no statutory requirement for a similar procedure in respect to the proposed variation in the fees for drivers' licences. The equalities, carbon reduction and environmental sustainability implications are all noted in the report on page 13, 14 and 19. So in summing up, committee members are asked to approve the fees outlined in Appendix 1 for 24-25 and for advert in accordance with the Act and subject to no objections being received by the specified date to approve those fees to come into effect on the 1st of June 24. If objections are received in line with the Act, the Council will have to consider the objections and set a further date no later than 2 months after the first specified date on which the new fees would come into force. And also approve the fees for general taxi licensing for 2024-25 as detailed in Appendix 1B on page 15, all with effect from the 1st of May 24. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that very full and necessarily detailed report, Mr. Cryer. Are there any questions, please, for the officers from members? There appear not to be. Thank you. So may I have a proposer to move the recommendation, please? Recommendations, we'll both vote en bloc for the two. Councillor Palin, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Gibbons, thank you very much. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Move now to item 4. There are no other items which the Chair considers urgent. Declare this meeting closed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.